fairly significant warehouses if there is no action taken currently. So we think that this is an area that is ripe for transit-oriented development in a balanced way. The plan does recommend sort of a different treatment in terms of uses and densities on the various sides of the track, recommending that or recognizing that this is an established residential neighborhood that does have 2 and 3 and even 4 families now. So just looking at the appropriate densities and uses to kind of knit into that existing neighborhood. On the industrial side of the tracks, we think it's a little bit more of an open-end question as to what types of uses and the densities that might be appropriate there. But it's all very much walkable to the train station and does provide an opportunity also to reconnect some of those areas where there is already some housing back into this train station resource. Okay. Amboy Avenue, Clara Barton area is something it's an area that's seen a lot of attention over the years, and we looked at it as well. We have carried forward some recommendations. We think that the allowable heights here could probably come down a bit, so that really there shouldn't be anything over 3 stories. We heard that pretty strongly from the community, this strong desire to keep that at an appropriate scale. We looked, and we'll talk a little bit later about some zoning approaches here, but we heard also that public parking, or the lack of off-street public parking is a big issue here. And so there's some municipal action that perhaps could be taken there, as well as promoting more shared parking arrangements and more efficient uses of the existing parking. Okay. Your commercial corridors are a big part of the character of Edison, and they are a big part of how people experience the township, people who live here and also people who are driving through. So we think that there's an opportunity to really strengthen the design of these commercial corridors, both for aesthetic reasons, but also, probably more importantly, to make them more pedestrian friendly and more safe for non-auto users. So one of the recommendations here is to come up with some design guidelines that could be implemented through your site plan review, actually over time, as you see applications come forward for these commercial corridors. Okay, and we also heard a lot about industrial development. We definitely heard that from the community, a lot of concern about the scale. It is not unique to Edison. We're seeing it in many, many towns that have great highway access like you do. It's been a topic at all of the planning conferences of late, so it's something that we're all looking at. And we have some zoning recommendations here, both on tightening up the text regulations, which were not really written necessarily with the modern fulfillment centers in mind. I don't think that they contemplated that type of industrial use, which we're seeing more and more now. But also looking at the area of Edison that is zoned industrial and looking at maybe shrinking that a bit. To really focus on where, the Raritan Business Center, the Heller Industrial Parks, like that portion of Edison that it really makes sense and reinvest in those areas. But in other areas where there has been less industrial development, but there's a lot of potential industrial development, perhaps shrinking that and thinking of a different zoning to mitigate those impacts. Okay, and then also continuing on the commercial industrial theme, you have this emerging entertainment district at the old Harts Mountain site, which at one time was viewed as more of a traditional shopping mall, lifestyle center. That has evolved over time with changes in the market to more entertainment and activity-focused events, which we think is a positive. One question that we have is how this can be made more into a cohesive environment so that it's a place where one could walk or park once and then walk around an interconnected series of sites to do the activities that you're interested in doing. So we have some zoning recommendations here, some redevelopment recommendations to really make sure that the future development of this site is comprehensive and cohesive. Okay, and then we also looked at Menlo Park Mall, which is an active mall, is a strong mall, we think. It's done a lot of great things over the years to continue to adapt to a changing retail environment. There are portions of the mall that are a little bit lighter used than elsewhere on the site, and we know that there's some interest on the part of the property owner to think about different types of uses that might make sense in those rear portions of the mall. And so we have some recommendations on just uses to consider as part of a dialogue with that property owner. Okay, I'm going to turn it to Noah and let you go through transportation.
Great. Thanks, Susan. With regard to transportation, one of the things that we heard the most was traffic. It was kind of a consistent theme at all of our meetings. That was something that we looked at very closely. However, it rose to the level of really needing its own study, in essence. So one of the things that we recommended was the development of a circulation master plan element. This doesn't preclude implementing some of the recommendations in the short term, but some of the things that we've discussed throughout the plan might need further study, such as coordination of signals, looking at reduced traffic speeds, other types of improvements that would require additional study and engineering, perhaps. We did note some of the hot spots that were just talked about, both that we learned about both through our engagement as well as through the analysis of traffic. Plainfield Avenue, Route 1, Route 27, and Oak Tree Road were all frequently mentioned as hotspots. We looked at a lot of different types of opportunities to think about the existing roadway network and what could we do. Obviously, sidewalks is an issue that we'll get to. You know, there are gaps in the sidewalk network. There are also ways to think about some of the streets and how we might repurpose them. One opportunity that we saw was on Central Avenue, right over here. The roadway is, you know, one might call it excessively wide at 56 feet. What that does is it encourages people to drive faster, perhaps, than they should in a residential area. And so, you know, you could think about those streets as ways to incorporate more infrastructure for pedestrian and bicyclists, and also improve aesthetics and reduce stormwater runoff and so on. So we looked at, you know, road diet opportunities. Central Avenue was one. We discussed some other opportunities in the report. We also looked at opportunities to lower traffic speeds with the goal of improving safety for pedestrians as well as motorists, and then improving lighting along all roads, which would improve safety at night, again, for all users.
Can you guys speak into that mic so people can hear?
sorry.
Are we having trouble with
Please.
I apologize. For commercial traffic, we did hear a lot of concerns about the intrusion of trucks in residential neighborhoods. One thing that we thought the township could do would be to better sign some of these areas, as well as post those routes on the website, as well as other places, so that they could be made widely available for those commercial uses. It is difficult to find out which routes are commercial routes as is, and so there is some improvement to be made there. We did look at pedestrian generators, such as schools and commercial areas and other parks and so on, as well as places where you have commercial corridors that people might walk to really identify priority areas for sidewalks. We know that sidewalks can be expensive, they can be difficult to implement, not all property owners feel the same way about them, so the township really needs some direction to prioritize sidewalks. The township did do a sidewalk improvement plan approximately 10 years ago. It needs to be updated, and some of that data hopefully can be kind of captured and repurposed. So that's an important first step. We do support other efforts, such as Safe Routes to Schools, facilitating sidewalk improvements on private property. So that might include ways to pool resources together, perhaps to have one vendor, and you can achieve greater efficiencies at scale. So there might be kind of a carrot, basically a carrot elements to incentivize property owners to implement sidewalks. And then also looking at other pedestrian and bicycle connections. We do talk about some examples having to do with connections to Rutgers Livingston campus. This is one of those examples. This was brought to our attention by the Open Space Committee. This just shows an idea that uses both off and on-road paths to create a bicycle link to really connect this important institution to Edison train station. There really is an opportunity there to create a stronger connection. We also looked at a lot of plans that had to do with trails, the Middlesex Greenway being one of those examples. A lot of the planning that has been done in Edison has really looked at trails from a regional perspective and hasn't really looked at trails that connect assets within the township itself. So we thought that a trail plan that really looks at specifically at Edison and connections in Edison would be helpful. Obviously, extending the Middlesex Greenway is an important element of that, as well as improving wayfinding signage to the Middlesex Greenway. We think that there are some opportunities with some of the power lines, the transmission lines that are there. There was a prior idea to have a power line along Route 1, so the township could revisit that. One other thing that we saw was the transmission line that basically goes from Route 1 to Papiani Park, right nearby here, which you can see is, despite it being signed as, not being, where people should not be walking there, people are using it. You can kind of see the pathways where people really use those trails. So there is an opportunity there. As you can see from the aerial, the green line shows the power, that trail under the transmission line, which really goes by a number of institutional uses. In addition to the municipal complex here and Papiani Park, it goes by Washington Elementary School, Edison High School, and then connects to Route 1. There also could be a connection to the Edison train station along Central Avenue. So we're starting to look at different ways to connect institutional assets and other pedestrian generators within the township. With regard to the multimodal system, of course, we wanted to promote transit-oriented development, as Susan mentioned earlier, advocating to New Jersey Transit for improved bus service, revisiting the Edison Light Transit shuttle, which we understand the township is currently doing, as well as encouraging park and ride facilities. So that might be working with private property owners, such as the mall or other commercial uses that might have excess parking during the day, during those commuting periods, and might be able to think about some kind of agreement to encourage shared car usage. We have looked at opportunities for open space. One thing that would be a good starting point would be to update the open space and recreation plan. As I mentioned before, improving the trail system and connections between parks is another important element. But we have identified a number of opportunities. Some are listed on this map. It's in the plan. We are happy to go through those comments, but they were really ideas that came up. A lot of them haven't been fully vetted, but are things to consider as the township moves forward. Some other specific opportunities that were mentioned include the Raritan Salt Meadow Kayak Trails brought to our attention by the Open Space Committee. We have looked at a number of properties along the Raritan River, and we do see some opportunities to improve public access. And there might be some limited opportunities to promote some type of redevelopment that will bring people to the river as part of potentially a commercial use or a way to really create an attraction while respecting the natural resources along the river. With regard to utilities, we did meet with a number of the township's department heads to really get an understanding of what's needed. It's our understanding that significant investment is needed in the stormwater infrastructure throughout the township. So not only is capital funding needed, but also better ways to track and monitor those facilities. So that's definitely a priority, especially as we see with climate change and the increase of severe weather events. This is something that the township needs to track very closely. Also, improving communication tools to better notify residents about utility work and disruptions. That was something that we heard from residents. And then supporting more options for high-speed internet. Generally speaking, we think that the town code could identify opportunities to reduce impervious surfaces for a lot of the districts. That will help with stormwater runoff and really thinking about that wholesale throughout both commercial and residential districts. Just getting back to that idea of resiliency, a lot of the area along the Raritan River is in the floodplain and is at risk for sea level rise. So that's something that the township will need to think about in the long term, working with those property owners to think about how they can make their properties more resilient and reduce the risk for those properties. And then the township might consider zoning code revisions to protect wetland areas. Other things having to do with sustainability and green building include encouraging circular waste management, promoting renewable energy sources, and incorporating sustainable construction and design standards into the zoning code. With regard to community facilities and cultural resources, one of the things we heard from many residents was the need for additional community facilities or community centers to meet the needs of residents in South and West Edison. So that is something that's on the horizon, but maybe the first step in that process might be to develop a community facilities plan element that would help you to determine the needs of existing facilities, or at least the capacity of existing facilities, and it might help you identify specific sites and programming that might be needed for new facilities. We heard the need for upgrades at the mini BVL Community Center and the Edison Senior Center. We heard support for the expansion of the library facilities, and hopefully the community facilities element could help in that effort. As I mentioned before, there's a need to improve public information communication for infrastructure, but also to notice people about community-wide events. So help people really feel more connected to the community, because there is so much going on, but oftentimes people tend to be more connected with their local areas. That could be a one-stop mobile app for township information and services. Also, township should continue to support Edison's arts and cultural organizations and institutions. One of those institutions is the Thomas Edison Center, which has plans to expand its center at Menlo Park. Another thing for the township to do would be to update the historic preservation element, and that would help to designate more sites and districts, both at the local, state, and national levels. Moving on to Middlesex College, we do understand that they do have plans to, significant plans to upgrade their facilities and build new recreation and cultural amenities. We encourage the township to be actively involved in those efforts so that it can help to shape those plans and work to also address any adverse impacts that might come from that development. So it really should be a collaborative process. With that, I'm going to pass it to Susan to talk more specifically about the land use plan and zoning recommendations.
Great. I'm going to be quick. We have larger versions of this if there are questions. Wanted to give opportunity for folks to make public comment, though. So this map is in the plan, and you have larger versions of it that were passed out tonight. This is really just kind of summarizing the land use approach. So you see the idea of the TOD, transit-oriented development around the Edison Station. Amboy Avenue is in turquoise. We talked about that, some different zoning approaches, which I'll touch on. The commercial corridors you see in red, really kind of as you would expect, the major corridors. Dark purple is sort of many places, but particularly in the southern part of Edison, that's your large industrial areas, and how to better control and regulate those and manage those impacts. You see in the orange, basically in the center, the Harts Mountain site, the entertainment district, you see the mall, and then there's some recommendations which I'll touch on about redevelopment and rehabilitation, as well as along the river and in Middlesex County, which you just heard Noah talk about. So I'm going to take you through, I think, some of the zoning recommendations quickly. We also have a larger version of this map if there are questions, but this map is in the plan and really just summarizes all those, particularly the zoning map changes that might be recommended or are recommended, as well as some of the zoning text changes. So in terms of your business zones, we're recommending just a really comprehensive review. There are a number of areas that have the same zoning district, but are quite different in their character, their intensity, their access, and should remain different and probably shouldn't be part of the same zone. So that we think there's a lot of cleanup and streamlining that needs to happen really across the business and commercial zones. On your industrial zones, I talked about this earlier, reducing the scope or the size of the LI district, the light industrial district. That is your most intensive industrial district. It allows the largest warehouses, basically, the largest facilities. So really considering rezoning the areas that are currently LI and to something else, particularly around the Clara Barton area and in the Camp Kilmer area. Retaining it in the southern part of Edison where it is, continuing to strengthen those areas that are already, pretty intensively used for industrial uses, but where there are other potentials, really addressing those. So considering rezoning some of those areas to a lesser intensity industrial zone or even a non-industrial zone. And we'll talk about some of those in a minute. Okay. Parks and open space from a zoning perspective, you do have an open space zone. We think there's some things that probably haven't gotten put in that zone yet. It hasn't been updated perhaps in a while. And you just need to make sure that all of the facilities that are on your your recreation open space inventory, your ROSI, are in that zone. You might consider merging your golf course zone into that open space zone as well. Talking about affordable housing, that is obviously going to be coming on the horizon, but in terms of the affordable housing zones that have already been designated and fully developed and built out, there may be an opportunity to sort of bring those back into traditional zoning and look at the appropriate densities that they're allowed in those zones. Okay. We talked about TOD, we talked about the transit-oriented development around the train station and two different density approaches. So in the existing neighborhood where basically the main parking lot is, looking at development that could range from a single family, up to no more than 4 units perhaps, a quadruplex, at a low scale that is really more appropriate to an existing residential neighborhood. But then on the other side of the tracks where it is predominantly zoned industrial currently, looking at maybe a broader range of uses to include potentially multifamily apartments, but also senior housing and amenities that could serve the existing residential uses that are already over in that part of the town. Could also be a place for future educational uses. For the mall, we talked about this, about kind of giving some flexibility as to the types of uses that perhaps could be introduced in some of those underutilized areas, particularly the areas along the back that are buffered from a lot of the surrounding neighborhoods by the existing parks there. So we think the best way to handle this, because of the need to negotiate and plan together with the property owner, is actually to consider designating that as a redevelopment area that could be part of a new planning effort done in collaboration with that property owner. Middlesex College, there is a lot of coordination to be done with their future plans, as Noah touched on, but we also think there's a bit of a zoning approach in the area kind of immediately around the college, so not the campus itself, but recognizing how much change is going to occur in that area, looking at perhaps introducing some zoning around the college that might be complementary to some of the educational uses, like student housing or faculty housing, for example. So we do have a number of recommendations in terms of redevelopment. That's a requirement of master plans, that you need to look at your recommendations in terms of redevelopment and rehabilitation. There are a number of areas that we are recommending either a new or amended redevelopment designation be considered. One of those is the Camp Kilmer area beyond the TOD area that we were talking about. It goes a lot bigger. It's a little bit of a blank slate in some places, and we think it really needs some comprehensive planning. Right now, it could accommodate a lot of industrial uses. I'm not sure the community really wants to see that scale of development in that part of town. So we think it really needs a close look. Plainfield Avenue, Route 27, this has been regularly cited as just a real area of concern for the community. It is a heavily trafficked area. It's also probably the concentration of your traffic accidents. And there has been some designation along this corridor of redevelopment kind of in different sites. We're recommending looking at more of a cohesive overall plan in that corridor that would look at, overall changes in terms of public realm, in terms of sidewalk, traffic improvements, as well as future development there. Amboy Avenue already has an overlay zone designated on it, a rehabilitation overlay zone. We're recommending replacing that with a new rehabilitation area that would not be an overlay. It would replace the zoning in that area, but it would get at things like the appropriate scale and the types of uses that would be allowed there. Harts Mountain similarly has a redevelopment plan in place. We're recommending an amendment to that plan. Our understanding is that all of the changes that have occurred there in the last few years, they've had to come back and amend and amend and amend their prior plans. So we think it's time for perhaps a new plan that you work with that property owner on. And then just a couple more around Metro Park. I think we all know what's happening on the Woodbridge side. at Metro Park Station. There are some opportunities on your side for a little bit more limited infill development. There's some office uses there that perhaps are a bit underutilized. There's the Wood Avenue corridor, which has great potential to make it more walkable, more pedestrian-oriented, a better link to Oak Tree Road. So we think there's some redevelopment designation would help look at some of these areas in a more comprehensive way. And then lastly, along the Raritan Riverfront, there's a lot of opportunity. There's also a lot of challenges with that area, both environmental challenges, ownership, but we think that the sort of the central area, the central portion of the riverfront around the Silver Lake area probably has the best potential for some type of limited appropriate development, and we think redevelopment is a good tool to make that happen. And then lastly, we know there's always opportunities, individual sites. So you might think about a scattered site redevelopment plan that could make things streamlined for when you have an individual site that needs to be brought into a redevelopment approach. So that was a quick overview. I'm happy to take questions from the board, and I know we want to give opportunity for the public as well, Chairman.
Okay, so our board will not comment this evening. We're going to leave it open to the public. Ron, the protocol is we will swear in the witnesses, get their names, swear them in, and they can ask the question, right?
You can proceed to the microphone. Since this is the public hearing, I'll swear you in. You can ask questions to the planners that have testified, and you can also make comments.
Just make sure you're speaking to the mic. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, can you please state and spell your name and give us your address?
Upendra Sapkota, Sapkota, 112 Jersey Avenue, Edison, New Jersey.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
First of all, I really like to thank you. I'm a licensed professional planner, so I've been doing this for last 15 years, so I know how it feels. And kudos to your team, Susan, and everyone for putting.
Please speak into that mic.
Putting
Thank
this
you.
together. Whatever I'm gonna say, I'm a planner, so I will try to be a little succinct here. I like the plan. The plan talks about a lot of different elements. I'm just going to start with the first thing, stormwater and sustainability and resiliency, given the fact that what's going around the country and the world. Plan does outline some of the recommendation, but it sort of misses the nuances. It talks about the green infrastructure, but what those green infrastructure for, like for example, would that be a bioretention pond or bioswales or things of that nature? I think plan need to sort of identify some of those elements and identify those spaces where those strategies can be incorporated. That's just a suggestion from my side. I think I think our town or any community cannot be complacent about the stormwater issue and severe weather events. Second comment I have is there was a discussion about building municipal parking lot. Parking lot is a sort of dicey issue in the planning world. We sort of want to reduce the auto trips and increase public walkability to pedestrian. But if we want to build any kind of parking structure, I would suggest we need to hash out some of the details of parking lot also, because we cannot just build a dead parking lot. Parking lot could be a good amenities, provided, if let's say, I'm just going to give you an example, if we incorporate parking lot with electric vehicle charging station with solar canopy above it and underneath a retention pond, then it could be a good public structure that could provide multiple benefits. But if we are just going to build a parking lot, it might solve some of the short-term problem, but probably going to create a long-term issue. So I just want to draw attention to your plan on that. I also went through the documents, and one of the assets of the community is, of course, the immigrants. And in entire document, the only one word is mentioned, immigrants. There's only one word. The reason I'm bringing it because diversity and immigrant-owned businesses are the backbone of any communities, and they provide not only a job opportunity, but also bring a lot of diversity and add to the economy of the city. Given the fact that we are retail and all these small businesses are struggling because of the Amazon effect, I think ethnic corridors, for example, in Edison, Oak Tree Road is one example. If you go to somewhere else, Newark, New Jersey, which has an ironbound community where you have a same kind of thing. If you go to New York City, there's multiple ethnic-based corridors. So I think town also need to leverage that asset and use that diversity to foster small business opportunity and things of that nature. Next thing, again, I think the master plan should speak a little bit more clear, robustly about how you're gonna, support immigrant-owned businesses. There's a lot of different state programs available. I think towns planner can do little research and incorporate and identify some of those agencies so that people, small businesses who want to, sort of take advantage of those opportunity can take advantage of that kind of opportunity. And one thing I noticed, there's no about the placemaking. In master plan, I didn't see any strategy about placemaking, not a single word. Sorry to say, not picking up you guys, but that's something I care about it as a planner and as also resident. So placemaking, I think we have a lot of open spaces and other different street corridors. So plans should also identify some of those strategies, how to incorporate placemaking strategies so that we have sort of vibrant communities in the state. I mean, in Edison Township. And also it talks about improving bus transit. I would also suggest, going further, if there's an opportunity to create some kind of bus rapid transit in coordination with NJ Transit and NJ DOT, I think that also can be identified. Those are a few comments that I had, and I just want to, again, thank you and a kudos to your effort. And I'm probably going to be writing a short email after this and with my additional recommendation. Thank you, Planning Board. Thank you.
Okay, sir, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
Name Mike Krumer, K-R-U-I-M-E-R, 33 Parkerson Road. I moved there January 20th of 83, so it's been 40 years. Before that, I started out at 1 Crescent Road back in 55. And I remember when Lincoln School put the first edition on Lincoln School. I now have grandkids going to Lincoln School. So just give you a little history. And again, at that time, this was a white bread community. And as you could tell by your board alone, it is no longer a white bread community. It's very diverse. A lot of things have happened, a lot of things have changed, and I love every bit of it. I plan on staying around for a little while longer, I hope. One thing that hasn't changed is transportation around here. This community has never been a walkable, bikeable community, and it needs to be done so now. It needs to be one of our priorities. I hope that the council, the township, I plan on being around here. I will be gladly willing to help. I'm past president of Central Jersey Bike Club, past chairman of the New Jersey Committee for the East Coast Greenway, and I helped with the Middlesex Greenway, still am helping, I hope. And in 1995, Walter Stokel back here called me up. He had the idea originally of walking around Edison Township, and he found out Edison was too big. So he called me, and we started the bicycle tour of Edison in '96. So that has been going on ever since. So we need to make this town a much more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. Again, I only live right across the street, and it's not safe for me to walk over here. So that's my #1 priority, is to do that, to keep that stuff in there. And they've seen my comments before. So I want to thank everybody for the time that's been spent, and we need to keep this going and kick this bicycle pedestrian transportation ball down the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record and give us your address.
My name is Mike Yarnell. I live at 282 Hoover Avenue, which is 1 block off of the Clara Barton section of Amboy Avenue.
Can you just spell your last name for us, sir?
I'm sorry?
Can you spell your last name for us?
Yarnell, Yarnell.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
All right, I've lived in that house for 47 years. I've spent a fortune fixing it up and fixing up the interior, improving the house. Clara Barton is near and dear to my heart. It's a unique community. It's not a downtown in the true sense of the word downtown. I grew up in Bound Brook, and in Bound Brook we had a downtown area with a train station and banks and all this. But Amboy Avenue has its own charm. It's unique. It has nice landscaping, some hardscaping went in. There's been great improvements with lighting. There's a mix of shops, restaurants, banks, a gas station, vehicle repair facilities, and residential properties, which is unusual for a downtown. But I like the way it is. And I don't like what's happening with my neighborhood. And I think that a lot of the things that have happened in my neighborhood have drastically changed the character of the neighborhood. Cases in point. A large housing complex was built on a driveway, Little Avenue. Now, I don't know what the planning board was thinking about that, but it went through and it has created a traffic nightmare. Then we have Camelot. Camelot is a housing complex of over 200 units built on a contaminated industrial property with the only access or primary access is Jackson Avenue, which is a residential street. Jackson Avenue is already crowded with a school, a trucking company, a restaurant, and a daycare facility. I don't know who did the traffic study on that, but I find it just absolutely incredible that not only does a housing complex have to use Jackson Avenue, but also the school has to use it. The traffic is an absolute nightmare, and the street is crowded for hours every day. The third thing is an empty lot that used to be a hole in the ground is now occupied by a 4-story building that allegedly, or I heard, violates the township building code because the top floor, the 4th floor, is not 10 feet back. Now there are plans to further change Amboy Avenue. But I will tell you that those developments have very negatively impact my neighborhood and the traffic pattern and the traffic flow. Sometimes I have to wait a few minutes to make a right-hand turn out of First Street to get on Amboy Avenue. I heard about developing the Jade Dynasty property. I've heard about developing an auto service business that's on Little Avenue, borders Amboy Avenue. And I've heard allegedly plans to take over Vince's property when Mr. Vince decides to sell it on Lafayette Street. I don't want to be highly skeptical that the planning board is working in the best interest of the residents of the Clara Barton community. I'd like to know about enforcement. I don't want Clara Barton turned into Pottersville. And I don't want to live in a city rather than in a nice residential neighborhood. The builders and the developers don't live in Clara Barton. I do. The builders don't care about Clara Barton. I do. If I wanted to live in the Bronx, I'd move to the Bronx. So please don't turn my neighborhood into an area that affects and do things that affect negatively my quality of life. Thank you. And I appreciate talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman,
Yes.
just before the next member of the public gets up, I just wanted to make one comment. There were some statements regarding enforcement. I just wanted to, I've said this before in various applications. This board is not an enforcement authority. It operates pursuant to ordinances and considers development applications, but there's no jurisdiction here to enforce or to monitor.
Thank you. Next.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record and give us your
Mary.
address.
Mary Ann, 2 words, Hennessy, Hennessey, 20 Carmelo, Carmello Drive. Good evening. I I don't know how to do this because there's so many notes that I've made. I've lived in this town for 50 plus years, so I've seen changes under Mayor Ulensics to now. We want to have recreation. I have a question as to why there is a piece of property at the corner of Truman and Kilmer that used to be an old Nike building that you cannot see anymore because the trees are growing up around it. It's a 2-story building. When Mayor Choi was mayor, he used it as an overflow for cars that were towed. It also had an 18-wheeler and its rear end parked there. Why have we not used that for recreation? Because if you gentlemen and ladies would go there, there is a sign given to the Township of Edison by the federal government for the purpose of recreation, and it has not been done. Nobody's done a thing about it. Rob Karabinchik had a wonderful idea of creating a recreation center using possibly outside, like maybe Nike, maybe Puma, whoever. And it had where there was an indoor running track on the second floor and a whole bunch of other things and the possibility of a swimming pool. Never happened. The next issue you people have, community center. Harts Mountain gave the township somewhere between 6 and 7 acres for us to use. That particular piece of property, to my knowledge, is on Vineyard Road, and you can tell it because the grass is high. It's equal to Sam's Club. Why are we looking around for a place to put a community center when you have that land? I've been told it's not an absolute square piece of property, so work with it. You got the park behind it. You've just done wonderful things in the park. Did anyone sit down and stop and think, move the gymnasium equipment that you have for the kids further back to the tree line? Move the pickleball court further down. Move the baseball field further down. And you've got parking space that could be utilized not only for the park, but for the community center. Nothing's been done, and that's been through Mayor Lanke, 2 terms. And now, nothing's been done. Plainfield Avenue. I live near Plainfield Avenue, and it is horrendous to try to travel on Plainfield Avenue. You got 1 lane up and 1 lane down from Route 27. And then it opens up to 2 lanes in either direction, plus an additional little lane to come out of Truman, to come up, or to come off of and go into Truman. Traffic there is brutal, absolutely brutal. And there are times when there's tractor trailer trucks and a driver who's never been here, and he comes to the overhead for the train station. And I have literally seen them hang out of the car's door to see if they're going to clear it. Have we ever changed the sign on the bridge when we repave it? Has that changed the height? I don't know. Mayor Choi wanted to do a transit village with Mr. Steve Golden, and that died because it wouldn't work. Now we're talking about the potential of doing it again. If it was going to be a failure then, it'll be a failure now. We also had the proposal of a bus service for the apartment complexes that are beyond the train station. That too failed. Bear with me. I thought I'd be a little more organized than this. I'm concerned about the plan with Middlesex County College, because from what I understand, they're a private entity and they don't have to go by our zoning and planning laws. So right there, we're lost. They can do whatever they want on there and we can't tell them they can't. They can put as many soccer courts on there as they want, as many track as they want, as many stadium parts as they want, and we have nothing to say about the increased traffic. But who will monitor that traffic? Will Middlesex County College hire a security unit to do that, or are we going to do that? Who's going to supply a first aid squad when someone gets hurt? Are they going to do that, or are we going to do that? And if those are issues that come up, are we being reimbursed for those services?
Mr. Chairman? Yes. Just on issues like reimbursement of emergency services and things like that, that's beyond what the master plan is taking into account and recommending. So certainly the land uses that are a possibility in Middlesex County College is a part of the master plan, but who's providing the services and things like that is a little bit beyond what the scope of this master plan is.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
understand that, sir. I really do. But I think I have a right to bring that out as an issue. Because if those fields that are soccer, and we're not just talking about 1 or 2 fields from what I understand, and that's not just going to be restricted. It could be used by professional soccer teams that come into play from Virginia, Connecticut, et cetera. So we lose control, which we really never had, because I know it's an entity that belongs to itself. But it's a concern. It really is a concern, because it increases traffic on Woodbridge Avenue. It increases traffic on the side street where there are condo apartments. It all boils down to it, and it's something that even it's not your purview, but it's an issue because this is a master plan. I'm sorry if we disagree, but that's how I feel.
No, I think the attorney isn't saying he agrees or disagrees. He was just saying that we're going beyond the purveyance when we're talking about emergency medical services and stuff. It's a topic that you can bring up regarding Middlesex County College because it is in Edison, and it is going to affect us in one way or the other. But emergency service is not in what we should be talking about tonight.
Okay.
But continue.
On your website, there's a page that's relative to Central Avenue, and what I'm a little confused about is if you look at it, on the left-hand side of the street, there's now a large strip of green. What is that?
Well, let's ask the planner.
Yeah, sure. I think that was just an idea, very, very conceptual idea to show how a street could be repurposed. The idea, in my mind, was to think about some kind of green strip that could be lined with trees. It could be used for stormwater control, but would provide some kind of a buffer between kind of an off-street pathway for pedestrians and bicyclists, because you don't have contiguous sidewalks there. So it would be a landscaped area. This would have to be further refined. So apologize for the lack of clarity, but it really is meant to show kind of a design that really needs further study. So that was really why it isn't kind of detailed.
Okay, why it concerned me was that by doing that, you're taking away from the curb. People park there.
I just wanted to say that design shows the maintenance of the parking. It's wide enough so that you could maintain basically 2 lanes and parking on both sides and have all of those extra amenities. That's how wide the street is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My other question is, what can we do to restrict or get trucks to know that just because Plainfield Avenue is jammed and you're heading out to Route 1, that you have any right to come down Central Avenue to Sutton's Lane and use Sutton's Lane to get out to either 27 or up Duclos, which it becomes on the other side, to Woodbridge Avenue. How do we stop that?
Let's let our planner answer. Go ahead.
No.
Is the mic off?
I turned mine off. I think it turned it back
okay.
on. There's no easy one answer. We have some strategies in the plan that are going to be a mix of signage, enforcement, changes to speed limits, I think Noah mentioned, actually putting the truck routes in an easily findable place. Right now, they're kind of buried in different sections of the code, so these drivers may not know, and they're just being told by Google to go somewhere to avoid traffic. So there's a lot of different strategies that we think the township needs to use. It's not, as I said, an easy answer, but certainly enforcement's going to be part of it, which you heard is beyond this board, but hopefully the master plan gives some guidance to those who do enforce.
Okay. May I ask one clarification on the master plan, if I might?
Sure.
I understand the master plan is yours.
Speak into that mic.
I'm sorry. I understand the master plan is yours.
It will become ours once we vote on it. Go ahead. It's everybody's once we vote on it. It's now it's preliminary. That's all it
Okay.
is.
So once it becomes the thing, do the other tentacles that are involved then come into play from the town for other issues that are an offshoot as a result of the master plan?
Well, when the governing body is adopting ordinances or considering ordinances, they look towards the master plan, and the ordinances are geared to be substantially consistent with the master plan. So it forms, as you heard the planner say at the beginning, the policy, the nucleus of the policy of how the town is going to proceed into the future, and the ordinances that provide the rules, the regulations, and the laws, and the enforcement of those laws all flow from substantial consistency with the master plan.
So do you, as the planning board, have the control?
I don't understand that question. When we adopt the master plan, it creates a document that the governing body will look towards. And when they're adopting their ordinances, they're going to be looking to create ordinances that are substantially consistent with the master plan. So this document is very powerful in that it will create a direction that the municipality is going to move into, but it doesn't create a law in and of itself.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for
Yes,
for
Mr.
council.
Danielle?
So, I've been here since Mayor Spadaro, so take Mrs. Hennessy. So she raised some good questions, and the gentleman from Clara Barton. Is this final version?
No,
I'm not asking you the question. I'm asking them and the council. So here's a document which I've gone through 70 to 80%. I've seen the same old stuff 20 years ago. We're still where we are. So this is a pretty good document. And if you go to the implementation stage, which I think is from page 190, so that's what the governing body, let's use the right words, the council is going to be responsible. We have a councilwoman sitting right here. So over the next 10 years, some of us won't be here, some will be here. But is this going to be the final that we're going to vote on? So for example, Ms. Hennessy had some good points. The gentleman from Clara Barton, more on Clara Barton, but on that section. Are you going to do a final draft of this?
Well, no, I
It's
think
going to be
that's,
at your direction, basically. I'll let you go, council.
yeah, that the planning board, who, as Mr. Chairman said, is listening tonight, and then is going to take it all in. And at the next meeting, the planning board will have a discussion, and the planning board is free to say, I like this, maybe modify this, tweak this, take this out. So this is certainly the working document that we have,
Well,
but it's not.
So
it's
as
not
a
take it
lawyer
or
would
leave
say,
it.
this is a working draft?
It says on the front page, public hearing draft. It
I
says right
understand.
on
So,
there.
but
So it can be
but Lenny,
changed.
I've been through here. No, what happens, this will be rubber stamped and it'll be the same
Well,
thing.
no, no.
I've been down this road.
The ball's in your court is what I would say,
So if
after
we-
you hear from the public.
So I'm taking notes. So there's a couple of things Ms. Hennessy just said that I thought were interesting. And so are you saying that let me go, Lenny. We're going to be able to, at the next meeting, if I come with typed addendums and I pass them out to my fellow board members and say, all right, here's the draft. So the draft plus the addendums equals the final document?
I think the chairman outlined a process where you're going to have a subcommittee who sort of directs some of that. Is
Well, I'm
that
not on the
correct?
subcommittee, so how do I get my comments in?
Well, here's how we're going to do it. I did send an email out to
I read
everybody
that,
on the
but it
board.
didn't- but it
Okay.
didn't say
So,
exactly
so
what I'm
what I said was, we're going to allow the public to comment tonight,
Right?
and our board can ask questions at the next meeting along with the public, or you can direct your emails to our subcommittee, which can be emailed to Cassie or Rachel.
So is it a
And then
subcommittee?
we're going to make sure that the planner gets that information. to amend this or change it in any way it's necessary.
So if I have amendments or.
Yes,
then
well,
I'm gonna
wait a second.
I want to write.
The committee will look at it to see if it
Right,
makes sense.
and we'll make a vote. If
But
they
let-
say no,
yeah,
or
we'll
let's say
vote
they
on it.
yes, then we send
And then
them.
we will give it to the planner. That's how it's going to work. You have a better understanding now?
I understood. I want to
Okay.
see how it's going to
All
work
right.
in
All right.
operations.
All
Because
right.
I've been down this
All right,
road.
so our board will not be asking further questions tonight. We're going to let the public ask questions tonight, and you can come back with questions, and the rest of the board will come back with questions if we have them at the next meeting. Yes, ma'am, come on.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record and give us your address.
Sure. My name is Golda Spire, Golda. Last name Spire, Speyer. I live at 138 Hillcrest Avenue.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. I just want to, thank the planning board and the township for taking this initiative. I know it's not an overnight.
Please speak into that mic so we can hear you.
I was just thanking the planning board and everyone involved. I know master plans are not an overnight document, and they take a lot of thought and workshopping. I bought my house when I was 27 by the train station, so I might be that missing cohort you were talking about. I was really attracted to the accessibility to the train and being able to walk there, so I'm really a big proponent for what I see on the TOD side. I think that it's time that the Edison train station move forward in that way, in the respect. I typically walk there, and if I'm going out, I'm taking the train to Metuchen or New Brunswick, and it would be really nice to spend my money back here in Edison at maybe some retail or mixed use that's happening there. So I do want to advocate what I see on your master plan for the TOD. I think that's aligned with smart planning and would be attractive to that new cohort you might be looking for. I heard that there might have been a failed redevelopment plan there. I don't know if that was during, housing crisis or 2008 or something, but
I think what happened was whoever came in there, they came with too many units, and they tried to put too many in that area, and maybe too many bedrooms and that type of thing, instead of going with the smaller unit, like a one-bedroom or an efficiency or something along those lines. So I think it was just the massive size of it that caused it to fail. But that can all be, like you said, it can look beautiful. It can be great for Edison.
and I think that's the next step, is
Right.
good redevelopment. To
Because
have that way.
Woodbridge is doing a transit village on their side by the North Edison, by the Metro Park train station. So while we're thinking about stuff, other towns are doing stuff. So I don't want to be left behind again on that. I hope we can move forward with it. I thought it was a good initiative to have, something I thought was a good thing to do. But everything's got to be measured. It can't just be an overdevelopment of that area, but it's got to make sense for everybody. So thank you for your comment.
I agree. I think it's critical, and I think it aligns with smart planning. I just had one question, I guess, at this point. The Route 27 corridor, there's a lot of just businesses that just overpave with front yard parking and literally not a strip of green grass. So we talked about stormwater a bit tonight. I don't know if there could be further recommendations in this master plan, and this might not just be Route 27, it just happens to be where I drive up and down the most and see it, but something to incentivize maybe existing owners to decrease some of that impervious coverage that just covers all of the property lot. It's unsightly, it's not good for, anything, and I just wanted that to be a comment under advisement.
I agree. I think the planner had some initiatives for us to do there, streetscapes and some things like that to make more impervious coverage there instead of pervious coverage, where you're just having asphalt there. Better off having it so your drainage will be better and things like that. But Susan, you?
Yeah, there's a combination of regulatory recommendations, so maybe reductions to allowable impervious coverage as well as design guidelines. But I think you're speaking to incentives, which is a good addition. We can make sure that we've covered that as well.
Yeah, so there's somebody comes in and you can enforce it in a new application, but how do you get the existing property owners that might be a little more slower to coming in to kind of correct some of this? I don't know if that's just enforcement because they're violating maintenance by just installing it, but it really should be looked at. I think the whole 27 corridor, it needs some help. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your comments were very much appreciated. Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record and give us your
Joan
address.
Giles, Giles. I live on 76 Fairview Avenue. And I guess my first question for this board is, I'm very nervous because I live on one of the 2 blocks behind.
Ma'am, can you please speak into that microphone? And don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
Okay. I am, because the plan that you're putting forth really, with the rezoning that area where you want to put the transit station,
Right.
what would happen to our homes back there? Would they still be allowed, or would they be demolished, or?
Oh, no. Nobody is going to come and demolish your home by virtue of this master plan. And also, as we said, it's not even rezoning. These are recommendations for policies moving forward. The town will look at that area and decide how it wants to plan for its future. But I mean, this document doesn't recommend, forcibly removing you from your home, certainly.
Okay, but I don't like the idea, because there's really, to come from, if you're putting that on the north side of the track, you're going to have traffic coming from the Plainfield Avenue intersection, as well as Piscataway, and Central Avenue also comes through that intersection. When I go home at night, if I don't get to my house before 4:45, sometimes I sit on Sutton's Lane for 5 minutes trying to make a turn to get home. That's how congested it is. And I mean, there's not a lot of space there. The railroad underpasses, the one on Sutton's Lane and the one on Plainfield Avenue, are really just 2 lanes in each direction, and 1 lane turns off to the side. So, it's already congested. I just think it would be a great deal more congestion by doing a transit village there, unless you can get everybody to say that they're going to take the train and there won't be any more cars, because you're just going to bring more traffic to the area, as well as more development for the industry, even if it's light industrial. I mean, you really can't take a lot of truck traffic back there, because it jams up the intersection going out, straight out to Plainfield Avenue. Or if they cut through Sutton's Lane, to get to Route 27 and then to Route 1, again, it's congestion.
Susan, did you have any comments you wanted to make on that?
I was just going to echo your planning board attorney's comments that the next step of the process would be for the governing body to consider future rezoning, if that's determined to be where they want to go. Basically, there'll be a whole additional process, additional public engagement, additional analysis. So it's not like the master plan is adopted and your neighborhood is rezoned, I think, as the council said.
Yeah. But also, I was shocked that this has been in the newspaper, and I don't see any of my neighbors here, and I'm sure they'd be concerned. So I'm going to see if I could get them all to come to the next meeting to comment.
Right. So this is an open process. We've been working on this. The Master Plan Committee has been working on this, and they're taxpayers just like you, a good cross-section. A few members on this board were on it. And it's going to be an open process, and we're going to allow people to make comments. And we're not voting on this like today, tomorrow, August, it might be September, until we're confident that the majority of the people of the town are happy with what we have. And that's why we had all these open public meetings. I don't know if you came to any of those other meetings that we had around town, but we did have master plan meetings. But that's why we're here tonight, to allow you to say how you feel. And it's not just a rubber stamp that this is going to happen. It's a guide, and it's an idea. And if the town wants to do it, they can move forward with it. But nobody's going to throw you out of your house, that's for sure. Okay?
Now, is the next meeting like this going to?
When's our next meeting, Raish? August 14th?
August 14th?
So we're going to take maybe another half an hour of comments, and then whoever didn't get a chance to ask questions tonight can either email Rachel or, our committee, or come to the next meeting and make some more comments, because we do have some cases to hear tonight, too. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on, sir. Come on up.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record and give us your address.
Akhtar, A-K-H-T-A-R. Last name's Nasser, N-A-S-S-E-R, Pleasant Avenue. So I'm going to bring us back to Clara Barton. I have a feeling that many of us are going to bring us back to Clara Barton as I look at the people that are here. I happen to be a committee person in Clara Barton. I'm involved in the Clara Barton Neighborhood Preservation Committee. We're starting the Friends of the Library, and I'm a teacher in Edison. So the information that I'm sharing with you guys is from an array of different conversations. So I know that I heard that you guys said that in one of the meetings you had 100 people participate, but I went door to door in Clara Barton, and I probably spoke to like 200 people. And so it's like very curtailed to a specific niche right here. So a lot of things that I heard from people as I was going from door to door was like they liked the library. I know that has nothing to do with this, and we all know what happened about that.
Right.
But Clara Barton is very united in various things. We're concerned about the traffic on Amboy Avenue. A lot of people are not happy with the zero setback with the new building, the 4-story building. That was also said in the master plan, so I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the hard work that everybody's been putting into this master plan, by the way. In speaking to the residents, I got to learn about where people are coming from. Some people are coming from Jersey City, New York, and they kind of like coming to Clara Barton because it wasn't, a city. It was a unique sense of neighbors and businesses, and you don't really get that many places. And they feel like that if we go ahead and we start building 4 stories, 3 stories, and I know we're trying to get to 3 stories is what we're trying to do, but we want to try to keep it, lower down in the size. These views that I'm talking about are also consistent with the 2016 Hire and Gruel, where at the Clara Barton Neighborhood Preservation Committee, we have different commentary from different people, and it's all on record as well. So it's not like we've changed our attitude over years. We're still pretty consistent. There are many parcels of land on Amboy Avenue, and they have a very small footprint. And that's the reason why I think it's hard to develop in that area. We're trying to build too much of a dense construction in that footprint. And the residents that live behind there, that's a unique thing. In Metuchen, you don't really have that. And some of the other places, you don't really have residents right behind these businesses, like really right behind them. And all these different streets that are there. In Metuchen, you'll have like a couple side streets, but mostly when you go downtown, you're in downtown and you can't really you can't go into residential streets. So that is very unique about our area. Our community is not against change. We actually like it. We want transparency, controlled development. We want to keep the character of the neighborhood. You've heard that a couple times. And mostly we want to be informed about what's going on. We enjoy the new upscale and successful coffee shop and the ice cream shop. Those are thriving businesses, and they're only 1 to 2 stories in height. And you don't really need parking spots for most of those places as well. So we need to get something like that where we're not overcrowding Clara Barton. I feel, in my opinion, that we should restrict the height of the building to 3 stories and put 30 feet versus 35 or 40, whatever that number is. Even in Metuchen, which is a downtown, they just built a new bank. They decided to keep that at 2 stories. And that's a true downtown. So I'm not sure why we're going 3, 4 stories in some place that doesn't have rail or the foot traffic. And in the master plan, it even says that we're no longer looking at Clara Barton as being a downtown anymore. So if Metuchen's not doing it and downtown Woodbridge doesn't really have such tall buildings and they actually have wide streets, why are we trying to do something really weird in Clara Barton? It just doesn't make any sense. Now, there are reasons we should not have 3-story buildings across Amboy Avenue. One of them is to not cast a shadow on private residences that have existed 60 to 100 years prior to these new structures, and to maintain the right of privacy of those people that have lived there for all these years. We should also curb the units developed with respect to issues with parking. And also, if we continue to add units, we're overcrowding the schools. And we haven't really dealt with that issue. We need to mitigate the canyon effect. So if we're going to have 3, 4-story buildings all across Amboy Avenue, and you're going to have zero setback, you're going to contain the pollutants that are there from the traffic. I don't think this has been mentioned. And there's also going to be, so there's going to be worsening air quality as well. You're going to possibly, I don't know about the sun and how this is going to work, but I'm sure you're going to cast shadows on Amboy Avenue with such tall buildings. You're also going to alter the wind direction and speed. You're going to contain sound and create reverberation when trucks pass through and their axles clank. And that's going to be disturbance that's there. We already have the New Jersey Turnpike, and we get some noise from that. We don't need to hear noise right within Amboy Avenue. We also have the fire department right next to us, so they love to put their sirens on. And so you hear that right now, but if it's going to reverberate right through and try to get through that corridor that's going to be created, or the passing police or people that are honking or something like that, it's going to be something that we cannot turn back from. So I'm glad we're trying to pull back from the 4-story buildings and try not to change the character of our community. But there are some places that were listed that were recognized as perhaps being 4-story businesses. So in 2016, go back to that Higher and Gruel, they had a recommendation for several properties that were going to be 4 stories. One of them was Jade Dynasty. But as I was looking at the master plan, even though I've gone to the master plan meetings, I've put Post-its and I've gone to the online meetings and whatnot, I specifically talked about Stewart's, and I said that we do not need that to be 4 stories. But somehow Stewart's is on there as being a likely place for 4 stories. Even though that is a much smaller footprint than Jade Dynasty, it also starts to, as you go from Pleasant Avenue to Waltuma, it starts to taper down in size. I do have a question about Stewart's root beer property. They were talking about underground parking in some places. Would Stewart's root beer be 4 stories with underground parking? I need some clarification on that.
I think we're going to have to look into that. I don't recall getting that specific about the Stewart's property, but we'll get back to you on that.
Because it was mentioned there, so if you're going to mention it, I think there's got to be specificity there as well. The other thing I'm not sure that anyone's aware of, and I've documented this, I've told the engineer, when we get heavy rains, and we're getting all kinds of weather lately, Jade Dynasty and Stewart's, that part of Amboy Avenue, does flood above the curb. And Lisa, who's the owner of Jade Dynasty, she doesn't complain. I see her out there. She goes ahead and she cleans up whatever has gone onto the sidewalk, onto her asphalt. She's just a really kind lady, and she looks out for the area. So if we're going to do underground parking, I think we need to look at where all that water is going to come, because we all know that the heights are really tall compared. That's what the master plan said. I don't remember what the height was, but once you go from the heights and you start going down to Amboy Avenue, there's a stream of water, I'm going to call it a river, that comes down many of the streets like Pleasant, Waltuma, 7th, and it just finds its way into Amboy Avenue, and it has to find its way out, and it just can't handle that capacity sometimes when we have flash floods and things like that. So we do need to consider that. So if you do have a sedan and it's parked in that area, I bet that you would be flooded if you were parked on street too. So if we do underground parking, I think that the township is already aware of this issue. You need to, if people do underground parking and those places get flooded, I think there's a liability for a township if you know that there's an issue and you just decide to put parking just because you want to build as dense of a structure, as big of a structure as you can. I also hope that we are looking at the water tables, because again, Stewart's is all the way at the bottom, so is Jade as well. So if you are going to dig down there, I hope that that's not an issue.
We're not getting into specific development proposals. This is a general plan, right? Okay. We're not talking about a specific project per se.
Right.
We're not talking about digging into the ground. That's not what we're doing here tonight. Okay. It's a general discussion on the
but
planning.
Where would something like that then be addressed?
Go ahead, Ron.
The process is, and you're talking about specificity, and I'll turn it over to Susan, but generally speaking, the master plan has some level of specificity to it, but it's meant to be a general policy document, and the specifics come in when you have the governing body that decides which ordinances it's going to adopt and what the criteria of those ordinances and the bulk standards of those ordinances are going to be. But I would turn it to Susan as to which area you get into, which levels of specificity.
Yeah, thank you for the time. We did go back and look, and you know, the recommendations, it's on page 153. If you look at it later, planning board members, you know, the recommendation is to come down to 3 stories, except in certain cases you may allow a 4th story where it's needed to provide or account for either underground or under building parking. I think it's probably going to be mostly under building. I think some of the engineering issues that you mentioned, it's going to have to be site by site. Anything underground would actually have to work, so that would definitely be dependent on things like the water table. We did not say that Stewart's or Jade Palace should have underground parking. It just says that those are key focus areas as opportunities for potential, perhaps revitalization, or some of them might be underutilized, so they represent some opportunities for mixed use, but that's going to have to be dealt with site by site. That's sort of the level of specificity that we got at here.
I think it said that it was either or. It was underground or under the structure. So that's where I wanted clarification there. So that needs to be buttoned up, I feel like.
Yeah, well, and it didn't get on any specific site as to where that might work or be appropriate. Okay. It's really just looking at the overall area as different types of strategies.
But Susan, just from a standpoint of how the process proceeds, when you're talking about buttoning up, you know, belts and suspenders, things like that, isn't that more of the governing body stage where they're adopting ordinances with very specific criteria based upon the master plan?
Absolutely, that would come in the zoning phase. So, which sites are appropriate for the 4th story? Do you want to even allow underground parking? That would be something for the governing body to consider.
But I guess my bigger question here is, why did Stewart's get identified to be a 4-story when it was never mentioned before? And I definitely put that down as comments. I said I do not want that to be 4 stories. So if it's transparency here, if it's by the public and everyone that's in the area, like I said, we do not want the 4 stories.
Well,
why is that
sir, with all due respect, under the law, you can't testify on behalf of what 200 people think. You can certainly testify on behalf of what you think.
Yes. But I'm asking if that's what's put into the document. That means that it came from the public, right?
No, it's put in the document. It means that after considering all of the comments from the public, doing their own research, and bringing their own expertise to the master plan, they felt that was the best recommendation.
Is there a way that we can see who has put that forth there? Because again, I don't.
They're sitting here. That's who put it forth.
I would say from that site is considered underutilized. It's one of the larger properties in the Amboy Avenue area. A lot of those properties, as you mentioned, are very shallow.
Right.
And so they really are very limited as to what could happen on those properties. Stewart's and Jade Dynasty, those are larger sites, so they just lend themselves to more development potential. It doesn't mean that they will or should be developed. It's just that when you're looking at sites along that corridor, those represent perhaps low-hanging fruit, more opportunities than some of the other narrow, shallower lots.
Okay, so in my opinion,
From a
you're the
planning
expert.
perspective.
And you're the expert. I'm just giving my opinion. I think that it should not be 4 stories. I hope we can get it down to 3.
That's what we're here for tonight, for you to give your opinion and to have input. That's what this is about.
All right, so.
But please give other people a chance to speak.
Oh, I will. I'm just trying to finish up whatever I want to say. I'm skipping along here, so just give me a second. The other things that I wanted to consider as we were talking about Little Avenue, I'm hoping that we will go ahead and perhaps purchase it. That has always been the bane of the existence of people in Clara Barton. And also Jackson Avenue. I think we got to do something about that as well, but other people will talk about that on their behalf. We had a meeting at the Clara Barton Neighborhood Preservation Committee, and I'll let other people talk about that if that's what they want to. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, come on up, Lois.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record and give us your address.
Lois Wolke, Wolke, 10 Peak Road, Edison. I have to say I did not read 195 pages, and I don't intend to, but a couple of things did jump out at me. One of them was the Transit Village. A Transit Village was proposed years ago, I think, under the Choi administration by Steve Golden, the developer. It was defeated then, it was a bad idea then, and it's a worse idea now. That area wasn't as developed back then. I travel that area 3 times a week, and I could tell you I am inundated with Amazon trucks and a lot of other trucks from the warehouses. They block up the intersection. It's at a standstill, especially rush hour, as the other speaker said. You cannot move. I don't understand how there's going to be ingress and egress from a transit village on a road that you can't move on now. It should be really thought over very carefully. And I want to say I'm not opposed to a transit village. What I'm opposed to is the way the developers develop it and the way we allow it. They try and cram everything they can into that village, and they don't give a darn how it affects the residents. I mean, they only care about their bottom line. And you fellas, all our elected officials, have to protect us from that kind of development. And I know this is only suggestions now, but I really don't want to see this to go any further unless it really is changed from the way it was proposed to be built last time. The other thing that jumped out at me was residential neighborhoods, that the master plan wants to strengthen residential neighborhoods to preserve the unique character and charm. I have to say what's happening in our neighborhoods is not charming whatsoever. You see these little Cape Cods being raised and these big houses being put up, overshadowing the little Cape Cods and the residents who have been there for 50 years. It's not a way to develop this. The quality of life is deteriorating in this town, and I'll say that unequivocally. The traffic is horrendous. The master plan has to do something with clarification of the warehouses, which I know you're doing. But you take your life in your hands going past Costco with all those trucks coming off the 287 onto 27. They don't stop. They just keep going, and it's going to get worse because we're building more there. And I really don't know how to control it. And as far as the residential areas, I'll talk about the RB area. Years ago, the floor area ratio was increased. And you know why? Because the zoning officer said he was inundated with variances from the RB zone, and there was just no time to take care of it. So instead of maybe the remedy would be to get another zoning officer, they decided they're just going to allow bigger houses on smaller lots, and they are going to further deteriorate the quality of life in this town. I suggest under the master plan, if it's allowable, that floor area ratio go back to what it was. Let the people who live here enjoy their homes without being overtaken by...
I think that's a specific ordinance that would have to be passed by the council, Lois. So that's not something that the master plan would do.
I agree with that, but I'm just saying when you make up the master plan, don't leave loopholes in there. Make sure it's cut and dry so we can stop this. I mean, I watched the zoning board meetings. The other day, they had 3 applications with bulk variances. You know what? If you have bulk variances, maybe it's time to get a bigger house and stop asking to encroach on your neighbors. But anyhow, I find this all very interesting. We're leaving it in your hands, and there'll be other meetings, and that's about all I could say.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna go for another 15 minutes, and then we're gonna have our regular meeting. But who had? Yes, ma'am. Come on. If we can just kind of move along so other people can
I
talk.
won't talk too long.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
Elizabeth Conway, Conway, 20 Netherwood Circle, Edison. Could you do me a favor and put up page 9 on your...
Page 9 of what? Of the report or the
Yes.
resolution?
Yes. Just page 9.
Let's see. Oh, page,
It's a-
did you say page 9?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a residential picture of an old house versus a new house. And it's just to emphasize the point. Yes, thank you. I've been coming to zoning board and planning board meetings for years, and my biggest push was that this master plan happen, so we can take hold of this township. Just as the gentleman spoke before, I moved in January of 1983, and I moved into what was called a small colonial. And you had your choices of 3 houses in the development. One house was a 3-bedroom ranch. It was 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a living room, and a country kitchen. No basement, 1-car garage. Next one added a dining room. Next one added a small TV room. So they were small homes, but they were affordable at the time. As the years have progressed, somebody might add another bedroom, maybe go out for a TV room if they didn't have one. But it kept the quality of the development happening, staying that small development and knowing your neighbors coming and going. Well, as I look at this picture, my home is probably like the top home, and 2 houses down is the house below. Does that look like the same development? No, it doesn't. And why I asked of this is because this is what is happening to our township and not just residential homes. It's happening to all redevelopment where we're getting as much as possible and more into the same spaces. And that's why for years I've been hoping for the planning board to put a hold on the plans for our township. Yes, you have your zoning board that allows this bulk variance and this bulk variance, and it's just been getting out of hand. But the initial part starts with you guys. What is our plan? How can we stop one building being knocked down for 4 going up? What can we do for one building being knocked down and multiple townhouses proposed to go up? What can we do for one office building of reasonable height to turn into a huge multi-story? Our town is huge. The transportation is beyond. I met a friend for dinner one night, not too long ago, and I live off of Inman Avenue. And just as the lady said it took her forever to get off her block, I waited 7 minutes to get onto Inman Avenue from my block. And it also took me an hour and a half to get to the Metuchen Diner. So we really need to look into our transportation. Now, along Inman Avenue, there is some. I'd love to see more going to Metro Park or going into different places. I'd like to see our redevelopment plans going in a positive direction. Oak Tree Road knocked down some really sore buildings. I'm keeping my fingers crossed with the redevelopment that huge structures don't take over, that we try to keep sections of our town to be well planned. And that's what I'm asking of our master plan, that we truly plan it well for our township. Do we have enough recreation? No. Do we have enough transportation? No. Do we have enough entertainment? No offense, Harts Mountain is not going to be a walk around. You're going to walk from Top Golf to the race car place and then over to Applebee's to stop? I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're planning properly.
I think what the planner is saying there is there's not a lot of sidewalks there. They want to make it more pedestrian safe, you know, where you don't have to drive, where you can walk on the sidewalk. I think, right, Susan? Is that what you're looking to do?
Yeah, but to walk from Top Golf to the racetrack, I don't think you're going to get
Well,
walking.
right now, there's very little sidewalks there, right? So they want to make it safer for people rather than walking on the street where it's like crazy over there.
But our plan of what we put in there can allow for it. Right now, with what's going in there, is not walkable items to begin with. So I'm asking you to, when you're planning, look into the things that we truly need. What do we want to do to Amboy Avenue is very important. But what do we want to do to Inman Avenue? What do we want to do to Plainfield Avenue? What do we want to do to Plainfield Road, Oak Tree Road? It's got to be a master plan. What's best for our township?
Thank you.
Is all I'm asking.
Thank you. I
I'm done.
appreciate it. Okay. Yes, come on up. I know you've been waiting. And then,
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
My name is Karen. Last name is Halo, Halo, and it's 55 First Street, Clara Barton. I guess I have to, he's my neighbor. I guess I just sort of feel like, I don't know, we kind of kicked around in Clara Barton. I don't know how the main access road to my house, I'm looking at potentially 5 multi-story buildings, if we include Jade Dynasty, the Delta Station, perhaps Vince's, the one that's been overbuilt. Most of them are on the same side of the street. So now that means at noon it's like dark because of the shading and everything else going on. I don't know if anybody's been to downtown Woodbridge, but you go around that circle and it's like takes your breath away because I can't believe what they've done there. You know, I always thought that if you build something, it shouldn't be higher. You know how Philadelphia had you couldn't build higher than Ben Franklin's hat for like a number of years, okay? Why are we building higher than Clara Barton School? Like, what is that? Isn't that high enough for a residential community? And then how did we actually get to the point that we're going to cram 5 or 6 multi-purpose buildings into a 10-block radius blows my mind. Because I don't hear anybody else across town. I don't hear Inman Avenue getting 5, 6 multi-purpose buildings, housing. So everything's like shoved in this corridor, and I guess I just don't really understand how that is, considering we have 2 nail polish places, 2 pizza parlors, an ice cream shop, a coffee shop. I don't consider that a thriving downtown area personally, and a mall a quarter of a mile away. So that's my take on the Clara Barton section. The next one I have is just an open question. Who here has been on a cruise? Anybody been on a cruise?
Ma'am,
Okay.
ma'am, you have to address the board and ask questions to the
Okay,
to the
who on the
witnesses.
board has been on a cruise?
No, the board is not.
no.
gonna-
This is to ask the planner questions about
Okay.
planning.
No,
Okay?
but there's a logic to my insanity, trust me.
I have though, so.
Okay, so you have. Have you watched cruise ships come in? They're large and impactful, right? Have you? I brought some pictures of North Edison to some of the people who now have woken up to a cruise ship in their backyard. Okay, this is basically, they're these big white monsters, sometimes 4 to 6 car garages. 1/4 of the property now is a parking lot. And how somebody got the bad luck of the draw to have a cruise ship in their backyard is amazing to me. Okay, the only thing it's missing is people welcoming them on board with a rum and coke. And it's laughable, but it's not. Like, how did these things happen to people that have lived there, worked hard to get their houses, to live next door to a cruise ship? I went today, I live in Clara Barton, but I grew up in the country club section, specifically Mulberry Lane. And there's one house right now that's being built, And the guy who lives there, still our original neighbor, now has a cruise ship alongside of his house. Now, 25,000 square feet clearly isn't enough for anybody in their right mind to live in. No, you have to try to shove it onto a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot house on that same lot that we all had in our neighborhood. And you also have to take it up a story. So I don't really understand how all this is allowed. So today, because I'm a geek and I like to carry my tape measure, I went over to Mr. Riley's property and I threw my tape measure out to the end of this lovely cruise ship being built next to his house. And it is actually 11 feet from his property line. A 5,000 square foot house is 11 feet from a guy's property line. Okay, so what we're talking about here is quality of life. And I don't know, I'd be pretty pissed off if that was, excuse me, I would be pretty angry if that was my house and that happened to me in a neighborhood that I really bought into because it had a nice vibe. Everything was cohesive, it had big trees, everything kind of had a neighborhood feel to it. And now you've got Carnival Cruise Lines. So anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to talk, but I'm really concerned about the quality of life. And of course, a lot of the points that they've made, I think, are very good points. And I know that you guys will, take your time and do this right because it's been a long time coming. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ma'am, we're going to take one more comment, and then we're going to carry this to the next meeting.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
Riquermi Casado, Riquermi, Casado, Casado. I'm at 205 Jackson Avenue. My question is, why didn't Jackson Avenue make it to your plan specifically? All the surrounding areas kind of did. We have a huge problem with the fact that we are a residential area broken up by commercial area right next to a school. Your plan also includes that you're kind of, making some streets narrower to add bike lanes. There's actually a plan for our street to widen it. What's the purpose of that? The purpose of that is for safety on our street. We have 18-wheelers passing on a regular basis right next to middle schoolers. So my question is, why isn't Jackson Avenue being looked at and addressed?
Why isn't Jackson Avenue looking...
specifically being addressed in the plan as a problem? We have a huge problem. There's no mention of Jackson Avenue. Everything around us, yes, including Lido Avenue, like acquiring it for a bike lane. We need an exit for these trucks so they can get away from these kids when they're walking to school.
Hang on one second. Susan, you want to answer?
Well, I would just say that the issues that you mentioned are raised in the master plan: truck traffic, speeding, pedestrian safety. So
maybe not specific.
Maybe not specific on
Jackson
all
Avenue.
individual streets, but it's definitely raised as a township-wide issue. And I think the case that you saw on Central Avenue was really just an example as one approach. Every street is going to be different and is going to require different strategies, but that all of those issues are very much addressed in the master plan.
Not necessarily. I mean, we've been at this for a while, and I mean, everybody's speaking about the quality of life. Nobody's looking into the quality of life of anybody there. We have health issues. It's an eyesore. There's things there about acquiring properties because they're eyesores. I don't see anything being addressed on our street. So specifically, there are some streets in there specifically mentioned. I feel that Jackson Avenue should be in the plan specifically to be looked at severely because it is detrimental to this entire area. We are one of the busiest streets next to Amboy Avenue. We have severely narrow streets. Currently, there's an application with the state, for a grant to widen these streets. Why? So that we can make it more feasible for these trucks to stay here. I think there should be a more clear-cut plan when it comes to rehoming warehouses to the actual warehouse sections and making more clear identification specifically to our street, because our quality of life is probably down at the bottom with the rats, and we need to be addressed. We do.
Thank you,
as
ma'am.
a street.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to carry the public portion to the next meeting, because we do have cases to hear today. We're not closing the public portion. We're going to carry it. And you're also welcome to email Rachel. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming out. Do we have to make a motion, Ron, to carry?
We don't, but I need to make a formal statement. So the master plan public hearing is going to be carried to the board's August 14th, 2023 meeting. That meeting is a live meeting here at Town Hall in the main meeting room beginning at 7 o'clock. There'll be no further notice regarding that meeting. So if you saw a notice previously, you will not see another one. This is your notice. Also, the master plan is available in the planning department for review and inspection. I believe it's also available online. It's also available online for review as well. Again, there's not going to be any more formal notice. This is your notice that the master plan hearing is being carried to August 14th, 2023, 7 o'clock here in the main meeting room.
And then if anyone else had questions, they can email Rachel. She has her email address. You can get it on there and send it to the chairman, and our subcommittee will look at those also, okay? So thank you all for coming out. This is not closed. We're leaving it open. We want to have more comments, but we do have some cases to hear tonight too. So thank you all for coming. I think we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Good thing for that one guy. I've lost my Bronx accent.
Hey, see. Okay. Yeah, no, thanks.
What is that?
This is.
Yeah.
Hey, you gonna leave that there? care about the garage. That's it. I don't care.
She's the one. She's the one that ambushed. Good job tonight, Susan. Good night, guys.
You know what I don't like about that Amboy Ave and the Clara Barton
Yeah,
section?
yeah. Let's put
Oh,
that up
or the
next time
sidewalk
too.
jut
I said 5 minutes, Soltez, not a half an hour. Are we ready? Is everybody ready? Is Edison TV ready?
Who answered the question?
We'll let Mr. Soltez sit down. Okay. You said Mr. I called you Mr. Okay. The planning board is now back in session. Just want to make a note that case number P 22-2022 Just Nation LLC is carried to August 14th, 2023. No notice required. That's 271 Meadow Road, block number 366.01, lot 13.17. The applicant is seeking to construct a 12,800 square foot structure to assist in site operations. There'll be no renotice required. August 14th, 2023. Okay, and our next new business is case number P09-2023 Garden State Building LP 2, 425 and 475 Raritan Center Drive and 82 Sunfield Avenue, block number 395.01, lot number 24, 26, 27. Applicant is proposing preliminary and final site plan approval along with minor subdivision approval to construct a warehouse. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Michael Vidiello. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of New Jersey, and I'm here representing Garden State Buildings LP as the applicant under the application that you just described. The application is in the Raritan Center warehouse area. There is an existing warehouse and 2 vacant lots adjacent to the existing warehouse. The applicant tonight proposes an additional warehouse and a lot line adjustment, which is technically the minor subdivision, a lot line adjustment to adjust the sizes of the 3 lots. If it pleases the board, I have with me here tonight our civil engineer who prepared the project for us, as well as a professional planner who can talk to the board about the burden that the applicant's under and whether or not they've met that burden. If you like, we can start with our civil engineer at this time.
Very good.
Do you
Proceed.
swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and
So
spell
you
your name
got,
for the record.
why don't you guys sit down? I mean, you don't have to stand up. Okay, all right,
I can testify.
all right.
Gregory Oman, O-M-A-N.
Can you please describe for the board your work experience and your education as a professional engineer?
Sure, I am the president and owner of Menlo Engineering Associates. Have been working for Menlo Engineering for over 25 years. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey now for over 21 years. I'm also licensed in the state of
We'll accept your qualifications. You've come before us before.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Greg, you or others under your direction and control have prepared the site plan application for this matter?
That is correct.
And you have the plan and certain exhibits with you here to describe the application?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. So using those exhibits, can you please describe for the board, first let's describe for the board how the site is currently improved, and then obviously what's proposed under this application. And we'll mark exhibits as...
We'll begin with A1, and this was not previously submitted?
Correct.
Okay, so if you could just describe to us what A1 is?
Sure. I have 2 exhibits that are pre-marked. This is A1 with tonight's date. It's entitled Existing Conditions Exhibit.
This is the existing.
It's an aerial photo showing the property boundaries overlaid on top of that aerial and some of the surrounding uses.
Thank you. So again, describing what exists there now and then what's proposed?
Sure. This application is for a 14.41 acre parcel identified on the township's tax map as block 395.01. Lots 24, which is the northerly lot, 26, which is the corner lot, and lot 27, which is the southwesterly lot. The site falls within the RRRD zone, or the Raritan River Revitalization District, in which the proposed warehouse is a permitted use. North is to the right, pointing to the right of the exhibit. So the site is bound by Raritan Center Parkway on the east, Newfield Avenue to the north, Sunfield Avenue to the south, and existing industrial uses to the west. The site, as I had mentioned, is 3 separate lots. Lot 24, which is the northerly lot, currently contains a 1-story, 59,409 square foot office building that has a total of 219 parking stalls, 9 feet in width by 18 feet in depth. There is an additional 27 parking stalls that is utilized by that office that actually falls on lot 26 to the south, for a total of 246 parking stalls. There are currently 2 means of access to that property: a full movement driveway off of Raritan Center Parkway and a full movement off of Newfield Avenue. The corner lot, which is lot 26, is currently undeveloped. It's comprised of mostly just compacted gravel. It is utilized often by tractor trailer storage, et cetera. You can see it on the aerial, but it is undeveloped. And finally, lot 27, which is a southwest lot, is an undeveloped lot, primarily woods and wetlands. There is a driveway and small garage, which is utilized actually by the property to the west that falls on the westerly end of that property. Want to switch to Exhibit A2, again with tonight's date.
Can you describe what you're marking as A2?
Certainly. It's entitled Overall Plan Exhibit, and it is a colorized rendering of the site improvements that we're primarily making just on lots 24 and 26. Small piece for the subdivision that I'll explain shortly. So the main focus is to develop on the undeveloped portion of Lot 26, a one-story, 46,230 square foot warehouse building. There will be 8 loading docks on the westerly side of that building or in the rear that have measurements of 13 feet width by 60 feet in depth. Across that truck dock at the northwest end of that lot, we are proposing 11 trailer storage spaces with dimensions of 12 feet in width by 55 feet in depth. 93 parking stalls are being proposed along the easterly side or along Raritan Center Parkway and the northerly side of the building. Based on our requirements of the zone, 23 parking stalls are required. So the applicant is requesting that the board allow the 19 parking stalls along the northern facade of that to be land banked. We've included them in our stormwater management calculations, our impervious coverage calculations, et cetera, but we were just asked to that we can only construct, if we can only construct the 74 parking stalls along Raritan Center Parkway now. The existing driveway for lot 24, which provides access to that existing office building, is currently located a little further north than shown on this exhibit. And instead of providing another curb cut on Raritan Center Parkway, 100 feet or so south of this, what we came up with is a kind of a merger of the two. We were going to shift that driveway that is currently being utilized by the office building approximately 55 feet south to do a shared access. It's a 36-foot wide driveway that will provide access for not only the cars parking within those areas, but also the truck traffic for the new building. With the addition of that sliding of that driveway, we are proposing some additional parking stalls, approximately 14 along Raritan Center Parkway for lot 24. Because we are increasing impervious coverage by over 1/4 of an acre and disturbing over an acre, we are considered as a major development from stormwater management standpoint, which requires the 3 criteria: rate of runoff, how fast water leaves the site, water quality for vehicular impervious, and groundwater recharge, meaning the volume of water that percolates into the ground today must be met or exceeded in the future. Now, this site does totally fall within the floodplain of the Raritan River. It is also tidally influenced by the Raritan River. And typically on a site that is tidally influenced, rate of runoff, or how quickly the water leaves the site, is not a requirement. But on this particular case, it is a requirement because there is a downstream property from us that we could cause additional flooding if we do not reduce the rate of runoff.
Mr. Oman, I have a question.
Sure.
You got on one of your drawings here, you got MUMAR. What does that mean on there? I don't know. On drawing 4 on your demolition
It's
plan.
the soil groups. It just explains the county soil types.
Oh, okay. All right. And then you also have, in the middle of the property, going diagonal to the property, existing water easement to be extinguished?
Correct.
What is that?
There's currently an 8-inch water main that cuts from Raritan Center Parkway to Sunfield, kind of at a 45-degree angle across our property. We've been in communication with Middlesex Water. They are in the process of getting that water main relocated in Sunfield and going to extinguish that.
They're going to reroute it?
Correct.
Okay.
That will allow us to construct that building where the water line is today.
Thank you.
Our office submitted an application to the DEP for flood hazard, individual permit, and general permits, and have received that permit from the DEP, in which we have provided an underground detention basin, manufactured treatment devices, and an infiltration basin to meet all our stormwater requirements. All other utilities, including sewer, gas, telephone, electric, and water, will all be located within Sunfield Avenue to provide service to the new building. We're proposing new LED light fixtures throughout the development, primarily on lot 26, but also on a portion of lot 24, including 10 freestanding fixtures mounted at 24.5 feet high and 8 building-mounted fixtures mounted at 24 feet high. Provides a minimum of 0.5-foot candles throughout the development for safe circulation for pedestrians and vehicular traffic. We're providing street trees along both street frontages, approximately 60 feet on center, mostly comprised of maples, and narrower oaks are being planted closer to the building on the other side of the parking area. We've provided our tree removal analysis because we are reducing some trees at the northwest corner of the property for the truck storage areas. We are required a total of 137 replacement trees. By the way of our plantings for evergreens and deciduous trees, we meet that requirement of the township ordinance. We have also asked for a minor subdivision review tonight and approval, in which we're making 2 minor lot line adjustments, primarily just for the improvements that are in front of the board tonight. The first is the lot line that exists between lots 24 and 26. Because we are shifting that driveway, that's going to be a shared driveway, we are going to adjust that lot line between the 2 lots approximately 29 feet south. And then the existing lot line between lots 26 and 27 basically runs from Sunfield and connects to the rear property of lot 24. All we're going to do is we're going to hold that point basically as a hinge point on Sunfield and rotate that lot line approximately 45 degrees to provide approximately another 0.95 acres from lot 27 to 26. In terms of
I'm sorry,
variance-
Mr. Chair. Just a quick question of clarification. What was the point of moving the lot lines?
The first was, right now, this lot line kind of falls right in the middle of the existing drive aisle. So because we're shifting that drive aisle 55 feet,
Got it.
we're also going to shift that subdivision. The second is the 11 trailer storage spaces. Where the property line exists today, it would be falling off on the adjacent lot. So we wanted to keep it on the same lot as the proposed warehouse.
With regard to the shared driveway, the applicant will be submitting a draft access and maintenance easement agreement for review and approval?
Correct, we will.
That's okay.
We are asking for a couple of variances. A couple of them are non-existing nonconformities. One is the minimum floor area of 5,000 square feet required. There's an existing storage area on lot 27 that basically just stores salt. That is a total of 1,334 square feet. Again, existing nonconformity. That same structure has a setback, side yard setback of 29.5, where 40 feet is required, an existing nonconformity. We are proposing the warehouse at 30.2 foot front yard setback off of Sunfield Avenue, where 50 feet is required. And finally, the parking required for the northerly building has a requirement of 199 parking stalls. The plans show 188, but 6 parking stalls were missed at the truck dock area. So we're actually proposing 194. So we're 5 short on that. Based on some review during our prep meeting the other day and the request from the board engineer, we will be providing the EV parking stalls that are required based on the township ordinance and state requirements. The minimum at construction for that northerly building is actually going to be 7 EV stations. And if you have an EV station, you can actually count that twice for your parking calculation. So the parking variance that we're requesting tonight actually is not required based on by adding the EV stations. In terms of outside agency approval, we've submitted and received our Middlesex County Planning Board approval, our Freehold Soil Conservation District approval, and as I'd mentioned, our NJDEP flood hazard individual permit and general wetland permits. Lastly, the applicant has had the opportunity to review the Bignell planning letter dated July 10th of this year and the Delaware Raritan Engineering letter dated July 17th, 2023, and can agree to meet all recommendations and comments within those 2 letters.
I got a question, Mr. Bignell. Since they're under the parking, do they have to pay into the parking fund for that, or?
He's not under the parking anymore. He just explained to you that he put the charging stations in, and he's going to get credit for those 2 to 1.
All right, okay. All right, so you're getting 2 for 1 then with those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
and Mr. Chairman, these are the make-ready spaces, so you, as you're aware, the
Right.
applicant has to basically run the electrical conduit to certain spaces.
You have it there, it's make-ready, you can
Make
use it
ready.
whenever you
Exactly.
need it.
As you
Okay.
know, as you know.
I got it. 2 for 1. It's 2 for 1.
It's 2 for 1 up to 10%.
Where is the, do you have any refuse disposal area here on the site?
We do. Right at the northwest corner of the proposed building, we have a dumpster enclosure. It'll be picked up by a private hauler that'll determine, based on the tenant's needs, how often it needs to be emptied.
Okay. Is it
Chairman?
screened? It's screened?
Here we go.
It is screened, correct.
Okay.
We're closing gates and we don't see it.
Correct.
Thank you.
That concludes my testimony.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
signage. What are you going to do with signage?
We are not proposing any signage at this time.
Well,
but
yeah, Just to clarify, and your consultant's report brought this up, we do not have any sign variances or nonconformities. We don't have signage shown right now because of we have not identified a tenant. So what the applicant would proffer is the wall sign, any freestanding sign will be fully compliant with your ordinance. So we don't know what the sign would say, but there would be no sign variances whatsoever. Obviously, if a tenant came in and said, I absolutely need a sign variance, you'd see me back here one night asking you if we could have a sign variance. So right now, although they're not depicted because we don't have a tenant, we would propose fully conforming signage, and at the time our construction drawings went in, that would certainly indicate where and things.
And right now, it would just be signage on the building itself?
I believe there may also be a monument sign, I believe is permitted under your ordinance.
Right.
So the monument sign, again, the setback, the size, would all be fully conforming, so there may be a monument sign also.
I'd like to just know where it's at or where you would propose it on the plan. Do you have any rough idea?
It would be at either of the two driveways, possibly both, if two were permitted on the corner lot. One along Raritan Center Parkway and then one along Sunfield.
So you stay with the corner, the turn, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah.
One last item that I forgot to mention was that when we actually designed this, the office component is being located at the southeast corner of the building, but we did provide an additional door at the northeast corner. And because of the elevation of the building, we kind of show a switchback ramp. In speaking with the applicant, we are going to eliminate that door and probably shift it on the easterly side to eliminate that. I just wanted to make sure that was clear on, it's not shown on the plans that way, but if the board acts favorably tonight, we would certainly show those on the revised plans.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude your
That does,
testimony?
yes.
Any questions from the board, the engineer? Mr. Carley, any comments?
Mr. Chair, no. I reviewed the report with, my report with Mr. Roman. I apologize, I have a dry mouth. The design is pretty straightforward. Everything's parallel, perpendicular. And they already have their permits. They started down this path in 2021, if I read your documents correctly.
Correct.
So they've been at this for about 3-4 years, and they've refined the plan in coordination with the other permitting agencies. So everything in my report is pretty straightforward. Nothing makes you spit, right?
So you'll comply with everything in his
Yes, we
report? Just another question. In that back parking area that's on the other side of the wetlands, that's existing parking there now, correct?
All the way up to the
Yes.
west? Yes, that's actually the adjacent property.
Okay. All right, so I see you did some wetlands buffer averaging in here too, right?
Couple
So
of
you had
general
some
permits.
uplands that you traded for wetlands?
Correct.
Okay. All right, no other questions from the board? Do you have any other witnesses, or?
We do have our planner who was, thank you, who was briefly going to just talk to the board about whether the applicants met the burden needed. And
Very good, very
Do
good.
you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Elizabeth Strom. I live at 25 Carson Avenue in Metuchen. I work for Menlo Engineering. Along with Mr. Oman, I have worked there since the year 2000. I have a degree in landscape architecture, and I am also a professional planner. And I have appeared before this board on numerous times.
And your licenses are all in order, up to
Yes.
date? Okay, we'll accept your credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strom, so can I ask you a couple quick questions? So
Sure.
you've reviewed the application that was submitted?
Yes, I have.
And you've heard the testimony here tonight?
Yes, I have.
And you reviewed the exhibits that were here tonight?
Yes, I have.
And have you also looked at the zoning ordinance and the municipal master plan?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. Based on your review of the testimony and the application and the municipal ordinance and master plan, can you please just briefly describe for the board what burden the applicant is under based on the relief we're seeking tonight, and whether, in your opinion, the applicant's met that burden?
Sure. If I may, just before I do that, I would like to flip the
please.
exhibit back.
And I believe this is back to A1, which has already been marked.
Yes, I'm not specifically referring to the exhibit. I just wanted it in that direction for context.
Thank you.
So, as was described earlier, the first variance that we're talking about this evening is a front yard setback variance. In this case, we have a corner lot, which is along Raritan Center Parkway and between Sunfield and Newfield, and 50 feet is required, which is provided at the front corner of the building adjacent to Sunfield along Raritan Center Parkway. Excuse me, and the front yard setback along Raritan Center Parkway is 91 feet. So it is well in excess of what is required. It is just the 30.2 feet that is at the rear corner of the building that is in question tonight. So as is described, this is in the RRRD, Raritan River Redevelopment District, and all surrounding lots are in the same district. It was designed in the context of both industrial parks as well as individual parcels. And as you can see from the aerial, the majority of the existing building setbacks along both the Sunfield and Newfield, which are the perpendicular avenues to Raritan Center Parkway, most of those setbacks are considerably under the 50 feet. They are in the neighborhood of 30 feet. I have examples of that. Along 87 Sunfield is a 32-foot front yard. 104 Sunfield is a 33-foot setback. And along Newfield, at 100 Newfield is 35, and so on. And it is demonstrable from the aerial and from my site visiting that the vast majority of the setbacks along the perpendicular avenues to Raritan Center Parkway are under that 50 feet. So because of that, I do believe that this variance is grantable under the C2 variance strictures, that it relates to the piece of property, that the purposes of zoning are advanced, that it does not cause any detriment to the public good or to the zone plan or zone ordinance, and that any benefit outweighs any detriment. This property is unique in that it was designed in keeping with the adjacent office building and in having a more than excessive 91-foot setback. Because of that, in order to construct a comparable building on our proposed lot this evening, that necessitates a setback variance along Sunfield. And even in so doing, the building coverage that would result would be 22%, whereas 50% is permitted. So it is designed in keeping with the prevailing setback that are along the perpendicular avenues. In that purpose, we are definitely advancing the purposes of zoning to guide municipal action. In keeping the established setback, a reduction of the front yard is definitely appropriate. And to also provide sufficient space for in appropriate locations for all uses, as was described this evening in the draft of the master plan, it is in fact the master plan's specific recommendation that warehouse development in specific be concentrated in areas such as Raritan Center. So we had reviewed the master plan and we are actually in keeping with that as well. So, and then finally, to promote a desirable visual environment, maintaining the 91-foot setback along Raritan Center Parkway supports this purpose, as well as reducing the setback along Sunfield does as well. As to the negative criteria, the first prong is the public good. There are mitigating factors which exist, which lessen the impact on the surrounding properties. The majority of the properties along both Sunfield and Newfield, as I described, are consistent with the proposed setback variance on Lot 26. So the benefits do outweigh any detriment. Maintaining the current setback, with the existing building 425, allowing for a reasonable square footage, does require this deviation, but no detriment, in my opinion, is promulgated by this. As to the second prong, the zone plan and zone ordinance, the zoning ordinance does require the 50 feet. However, the primary frontage is really along Raritan Center Parkway, which is excessive in 91 feet. And in keeping with to be consistent with the existing office building on Lot 24, it does require this minor front yard setback on Sunfield, the secondary frontage. So building coverage permitted is 50, whereas we are proposing 22. And in the context of the previously developed industrial park, this minor setback deviation is consistent with the previous development, and it mitigates any impairment. I can go on and describe the second proposed variance, which is the parking, although we have described
Well, let
earlier
me just
that-
ask you, I know you mentioned the same, some of the benefits. Are the benefits that were previously referenced applicable to that case also?
Yes, in fact, they are.
And is
Yes.
your opinion the same as to whether the burden's been met?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
so we'll see if the board has any more questions on that element, but do you have anything else though? That's it? Okay. So Mr. Chairman, that concludes our direct testimony from our civil engineer and from our planner, but we're certainly open to questions or any more comments or anything else.
Any questions from our board?
Yeah, just to clarify again.
Peter.
The parking, I thought we said we don't need the variance.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's
Okay.
correct. Under the EV statute,
Right.
as your engineer
All right,
pointed
so
out.
technically, we don't need the variance. Can you just, for the record, tell us if you feel there is enough parking on the site?
Yeah. I think we are certainly have plenty of parking for what we expect for our proposed use, with a little bit of buffer for uncertainty. We also have, as you've heard, our engineers testified, we've land banked some additional spaces, which we don't want to build because we think that would be too much, but we're going to land bank them. And we've built those into our impervious coverage calculations. So even though that area will not be asphalt, we're already going to treat the stormwater. So we think we're really very conservative and really making sure the parking doesn't become an issue for anybody.
How many spaces have you land banked?
17? 19 spaces are land bank.
The land bank spaces, those aren't, you're not counting those towards the required parking. Those are in excess of the required parking?
I'm going to ask my engineer.
That is included in the parking calculation for lot 26, which exceeds the requirement.
So
Previous potential variance was for lot 24.
The other variance, the other lot.
What I'm getting at is you have enough physical parking spaces under the ordinance. You don't need.
Even without the
You have
banking.
land bank, but you
Even
don't need
without
them
the
to
bank.
comply.
Correct. Yes, because it's on the other lot. The lot
Okay.
that's already well over parked is where, right. So yes, we do not need the land banked spaces to meet the ordinance standards. Yes, correct. Sorry for any confusion there.
Okay, any other questions from the board of the planner? Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, that concludes your testimony, correct?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, thank you.
So we'll go out to the public. Anyone from the public that would like to comment on this application, please come forward. Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public portion?
Public portion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Mr. Bignell, you don't have any other comments, do you? Okay. All right. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the application, including our professionals' letters from Mr. Bignell and Mr. Carley. Also, in keeping with what we usually have in our resolutions, Delaware Raritan Engineering, Charlie Carley, or his designee will review all plans and submittals, perform all bond calculations, and perform all bond calculations. Oh, she typed it twice. And perform all inspections related to this project and application. Also in keeping with this, Delaware Raritan Engineering, Charlie Carley or his designee will sign off on all plans, submittals, bonding, and final approvals. Bignell Associates, Henry Bignell or his designee will inspect and sign off on all landscaping and lighting related to the application. Also, giving a little respect to Mr. Pippola, any changes to this approved plan, no matter how de minimis, the applicant must return to the board for approval of the changes.
Mr. Chair.
And one more thing, all improvements are to be maintained in perpetuity.
Just a few more conditions. You may have mentioned, and I might not have heard, but the common driveway, the applicant is going to submit a access, easement, and maintenance agreement for review and approval by the board's professionals. There's going to be a private hauler that will service the site. The refuse area will be screened, subject to the review and approval of the board planner, and the signage shall be fully conforming with all ordinance requirements.
And how about the land banking of the 19 spaces if necessary?
Yes.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second it.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Lay,
Yes to approve.
Mr. Pippola,
Yes, to approve.
Mr. Danielle,
Yes to approve.
Mr. Reader,
Yes.
Mr. Correct,
Yes.
Councilman Patel,
Yes to approve.
Mr. Soltesz,
Yes to approve.
Vice Chair Singh,
Yes to approve.
and Chairman Sandelsky.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Chairman, I have two questions.
Yes.
So-
Mr. Danielle?
So if we want to make comments, who do I email you?
Are you talking about the master plan now?
That's all I'm talking
You
about.
can send it to Rachel.
Okay, send to Rachel.
Yes.
Okay. And then
you
this,
can send it to the chairman.
okay, I'll copy you, of
Yeah.
course. Second, how many applications do we have on August 14th now?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
How many
How many
applications?
applications?
Since-
You wanted
since
to
we
know
still
how
have the
many-
public
How many
session.
cases we
We're
have?
opening up the agenda now. Yeah.
I mean, does it make sense we push some people back?
It is very full, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so
We had a lot
how many-
carried
if we
from this
have
month.
2 hours of comments from the public again,
Yeah.
I think we gotta
Yeah.
adjust our schedule
There's
accordingly.
6 cases on.
6?
There's 6. 3 of them were carried from tonight to next month.
Jeez.
I think what we'll do is we'll ask for people with new comments, not
Right.
second time, first time people to come up if they want to say something. And maybe what we'll do is, if we have to, we'll carry it over to September, you know what I mean? But is everybody in an agreement with
Because we had
that?
6 applications, and we
Yes,
had 3
Mr.
we're
Chair.
pushing back already.
I
Yes.
think maybe what we can do also is I can reach out to the attorneys for the applicants, let
Yes.
them know, what the agenda looks like that night, and some of them
Right.
may just request to be carried.
Yeah.
Put who up, Les?
What'd you say? Did you say put the pen?
You want to keep these people here the whole time?
That's not. Yeah, Ron, it's in fairness to the
All right,
applicants.
I think 6 is probably too much.
Right.
6 is too much. It's too rich.
Not for anything. I think you really need to limit the time that somebody can speak somehow.
Well, I was asking Ron
Give it a
about that.
couple minutes or something.
Yeah.
I think 5 minutes maybe. Ron, what do you think? Is that fair?
That's fair.
And
All right, so-
Some of the topics didn't have to do with the master plan.
Right, correct. We were trying to be respectful, but we'll keep it to 5 minutes. We'll tell everybody, and then we'll have a timer here, so
Right.
we can move through this. Okay, we have a timer, right, Rach?
Yeah,
All
we'll
right.
bring a timer.
Okay, all right. All right, if there's no other comments, new business, John will keep the time. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. This meeting's adjourned. Good night. If I didn't stop it at 2 hours, hey, Ron, if I didn't stop it at 2 hours, they'd still be going. We'd still be going. That's why I stopped it. Mr. Reader was hitting me with his elbow.
No, we would have still been here.
I know. No. That's why I had to stop.